collectively up through her shoulder, and I think maintains advantages in terms of strength at the ground and correctness on her hind leg. We get it to our heifer here that concludes and rounds out our class. We'd like to see maybe a little more correctness in her overall design, perhaps a little more proportionality in terms of her thickness and width relative to her frame size. Congratulations to our exhibitors, and thank you for their presentation.
Thank you, Judge Bidwell, and congratulations. The results of the first class of our junior calf division. Ring number 5 was a winning entry for Glenview Farms with Glenview Myrtle Joe. Second goes to ring number 2, the entry of Double C Farms with Double C Echo 6E. Third, also the entry of Double C Farms. She's ring number 3, Double C Elizabeth 4E. And fourth is ring number 4, the entry of Elizabeth Lockhurst with Blind Line Meadows Constant 1E. Now in the ring is the second class of our junior calves. We'd like to thank the banner sponsors. Poplar Lane Farm of Calden will be making the presentation to the junior heifer calf champion, and Leahy Stock Farm will be making the presentation to the reserve junior heifer calf. If there would be representatives from those farms, if you could please make your way to the announcer's table.
Well, over here in the limousine show on this side of the ring, I think pretty nice pair up here at the top end of the class. And when you talk about soundness and how they get out and move, I think these two heifers do so quite nicely and really overpower the rest of the individuals out here in the way they can get out and travel. So free and so easy when they get out on the move, a ton of flexibility and ton of cushion, particularly off of those rear two, and that's where this black heifer has a big time advantage. I think she's one that really has a little more length of side and length of that front 1/3, and over the red heifer that stands behind her, just square built, square made, and really free and easy on the travel. Pretty easy class winner in my mind. I think the red female that comes next is one ton of product into this girl, a lot of shape down her top, a lot of muscle mass out of that hip and extension to it when you study her down in through that stifle and quarter. And she too rivals our class winner in how she gets out and travels. Really long strided, fills her track quite nicely, and sets down very secure off of all four corners. Maybe not quite the length out of that front end and the balance and the eye appeal that you see on either side of her, but I think a very useful female there in her own right. I like the heifer in third. I think she matches up with our first place heifer more so than the red heifer directly in front of her, and I'd like to put her up into that spot, but she just simply does not move quite well enough for me today to get her up any higher. We need to free her up off of both ends, see her track out a little truer with a little more flexibility from that stifle and hawk and all the way down to the ground. Same can be said about the black heifer that comes next. Not as secure off of those rear two. Watch her walk out. We need to set her down with a little more flexibility and cushion off of those rear two. Let her get out and travel with a little more freedom. I like the red heifer that comes next because of that fact. She's a little more fluid in her movement, maybe a little plainer in her outline, a little rougher in through that front 1/3. Peel off a little bit of conditioning on that one as well and freshen her up. I think a heifer that comes next is a little more elevated through her center part of her body cavity. You need to drop her down and give her some more volume and rib dimension when we talk about that, spring a rib to that lower 1/3. I think a female that comes next, you love the length of body and the length of side in this heifer. Just not enough power today. Gives up some bone work and dimension and stoutness to her overall makeup to really get up any higher. Nice class of females from top to bottom. Congratulations to all those exhibitors.
The winning entry in that class is ring 64 for Loyal Line Limousine with Loyal Line Daisy E.T. Second is ring 67, the entry of Clark Windy Gables with CWG Dillinger's Girl 1D. Third is ring 63 for BZ Acres with BZ Pool Black Diamond 14D. Fourth is ring 65, the entry of Loyal Line with Loyal Line DD. Fifth is ring 66, the entry of Gibson Farms with EGL Gibson's Dakota 25D. Sixth is ring number 69, the entry of Hillside Farms with Hillside Sammy 7D. And seventh is ring number 70, the entry of Rancliffe Limousine with Red Maple Damn Cute. We're now moving into our last class before we ask the judge to make his selection for the senior champion female. The champion senior female is receiving an award courtesy of the Norfolk Cattle and the reserve champion courtesy of BZ Acres. If there's representation from either Norfolk and BZ Acres and would like to participate in the banner presentation, we'd ask that you come to the announcer's table.
This is a pretty exciting set of heifer calves on our Shorthorn side, mostly March class with an April or two scattered among them. A couple of roan females here on top end that I think have some trade-offs between the two. Both can be talked about. Actually, we can talk about the first four in terms of being very dimensional females that are very proportional with regards to their frame size and their dimensions. I think as we study those cattle and get them on the move, my trade-offs become that of skeletal correctness. I'd like to change some ways that we see this heifer present herself that wins the class with regards to how she comes out of that shoulder, perhaps a little bit on her hind leg. She could be just a little longer hipped for me, and I think that adds to the flexibility a bit as we get down into that hock region. But a good-bodied, smooth-made, a very long-bodied heifer, and I think that length of skeleton, that length of spine, gives her some advantages I don't find in the more powerfully designed even heifer that we have in second. This heifer in second is pretty unique. She's very, very boldly made up over the top of her upper rib. She comes very expressively out of her hip. She moves very comfortably out of her shoulder as I read her, with a bit more hesitation and tightness out of her hip and to the ground on her hind leg. Elegant fronted, massive ribbed, super stout, kind of a female that comes there in second, but just some trade-offs with those two. If you like one with a little flatter orientation to them in terms of shoulder shape and maybe length of muscle, this heifer in third would certainly appeal to you in that regard. And as a matter of fact, probably as she gets out and travels, she remains about as true in levelness of top of any of the top three. She gets a little more hesitant on her hind leg in terms of straightness into her hock. Doesn't have the dimensionality we find in the two that are first and second, but I think her correctness, her fluid stride, her levelness of design as she presents herself on the move certainly gets her into the top end. A more conservatively patterned dark roan heifer that comes next, one that doesn't maybe have quite the lateness of maturity or potential to continue grow, maybe would be a better way to describe that, that we see in those top three heifers. A heifer that's in the next spot there, the solid colored heifer that's in a lot different condition than any of the rest of them, but pretty sound in her makeup, and one that rounds out our class that just needs to be more correct in terms of her structural dimensions. Again, congratulations to our exhibitors, and thank you for their presentation.
The winner of that class is ring number 9, the entry of Hillhaven Shorthorns with Hillhaven Stargazer 41E. Second goes to ring number 6, Shady Brook Shorthorns with Shady Brook Isabel 78E. Third goes to ring number 8, the entry of Elba Glen Cattle Company with Elba Glen 24 Annabelle 22E. Fourth is ring number 7, the entry of Glen Isla Shorthorns with Glen Isla A Veronica 1E. Fifth goes to ring number 11, the entry of BJH Shorthorns with BJH Matchless 5E. And sixth goes to Cropdown Farms, ring number 10, with Cropdown Rose 30E. The judge is now making a selection for the Junior Division Calf Champion. Once again, our thanks to the banner sponsors. Poplar Lane Farm from Calden will be donating the banner for the Junior Heifer Calf Champion. And Leahy Stock Farm of Lakefield, Ontario, will be making the award to the Reserve Junior Heifer Calf Champion.
Well, again, another high-quality class of these limousine yearling heifers, and I think a pretty easy pair to get up into the top two spots for me, and the things that start to separate them pretty subtle in my mind. Here's a heifer up here that I'm going to get to the top of this spot that has some extra length of spine. She's got an extra length, vertebrae's worth of length out of her front end. When you talk about that length from the top of her shoulder to her pole, really packages it up, extremely well-balanced nature. I think there's one that when we set her into motion is superb all the way to the ground. You look at the angulation out of her hock and knee. and how good she is on the travel, and it's just pretty hard to beat that one. I think we come into a heifer in the second spot that's packaged up just a little bit different in the way that she comes to us, just a little more modern in that frame size, but really opens up into a nice, big, full center part of her body. I like that about her. Maybe not quite the freedom and ease of movement when we watch her on the go, but I think a heifer that's got plenty of flex and plenty of reach, maybe just not quite to the degree that you see in our class winner. And I think from the balance points on that heifer, we could certainly shove that tail head down in her, let her see a little more length out of the back side of that hip. I think a unique female is the one that comes in third. It's one that real maternal in her look. I like the fact that she's farther along in calf than maybe the rest of the heifers out here, and I appreciate that fact about her. However, I draw issue with this one. When we set her into motion, she wants to get a little bowed in her spine. Not quite the flexibility off of each end of her spine to let her level out and relax in through that top line when we watch her on the go. But I think if we could fix that aspect of that one, she can certainly fight a little harder for one of those top two spots. Really like the packaging on the heifer that comes next. Long and level and elegant out of that front end. Maybe not quite the power and shape and dimension of muscle that you see in the three above her, but certainly one that you like the structural build and the smoothness to her overall design. I think a big stout-framed, stout-made, and stout-featured heifer comes into the next spot in the lineup. A tremendous amount of bone and foot size on this heifer. You really have to like that about her. Maybe just not quite the overall refinement through that front end. Maybe not quite the depth of side that you need to see in relationship to frame size to get her up any higher. And same can be said about the young lady's heifer that goes out next. Long, level, massive out of her hip. Maybe just doesn't have quite the extension muscling down in through that lower 1/3, particularly when we get right around behind her to really balance her out ideally. And then a heifer that rounds out the class is one that gets a little uncoordinated in her parts today for me. She gets a little piecey in her design. Just need to stouten her up in some of those transition segments to really let her come in and get a little smoother look on the profile when we analyze her with the rest of the class.
Very briefly, we'll make a couple of comments about our division champion and the selection of the division over on our Shorthorn side. Really, I think the decision we make out here as we bring these two class winners in second places to choose a division and reserve is, where do you read the red heifer that comes out of that youngest class? She's big at the ground. She's got a good foot shape to her. She's one that, to me, looks like she's plenty late in her maturity. In other words, to me, I think she's got plenty of growth for a long, long time. And I like the two roan females that I think become more sensibly sized as we project them to maturity. I think they're more proportional kind of cattle. I think they're cattle that have the fullness and smoothness into that forerib, that smoothness that we have up through the top of that shoulder into the top of their neck that I'd look for. And I think it'd be pretty hard to split those two females up for champion and reserve of this division. I think they're a very competitive pair, can be flip-flopped at different times of their life depending upon when you catch them and how they're developing at that stage. I like the heifer we used to win this division because of her completeness and her balance. I think she's a rib longer or a notch longer down her top line than the heifer that's going to be her reserve that's second to her in that class. This heifer is very elegant up through her shoulder and very neatly made up through the top of her neck for as much power and dimension as she carries through the remainder of her skeleton. As you study her from behind, you'd have to be very impressed by that. Excellent pair, and congratulations. Let's congratulate our exhibitors with a nice round of applause on our Shorthorn side.
The winner of your junior calf division is ring number 9. Our congratulations to Hillhaven Shorthorns with their winning entry of Hillhaven Stargazer 41E. They're receiving a banner courtesy of Poplar Lane Farm from Calden, Ontario, and our congratulations. Your reserve champion junior calf today is ring number 6. She is the entry of Shady Brook Shorthorns. She is Shady Brook Isabel 78E, and she is receiving the Leahy Stock Farm Award. And we'd like to thank both Poplar Lane and Leahy Stock Farm for their support and congratulate Hillhaven Shorthorns exhibiting your champion junior heifer calf and Shady Brook Shorthorns for exhibiting the reserve. Over in our limousine ring, the results are in from the last class. Marking your programs, ring number 71 was the class winner for Rail Line Farms with RLF 111D. Second goes to ring number 73, the entry of Gibson Farms on EGL Gibson's DD 7D. Third goes to ring number 75, the entry of Pinch Hill Limousine with Pinch Hill Dewdrop 605D. Fourth goes to ring number 72, Three Ridge Farms with Greenwood Miss PYN 44D. Fifth is ring number 74 for Crown Hill Acres on TMF Miss 102D ET. Six is ring number 76 for Darling Farms of Castleton, Ontario with TMF Definitely A Hussey 103D. And seventh goes to ring 77, the entry of After Hours Limousines with After Hours Dixie. The judge is now making his selection for his senior division champion female. The award for this division is being sponsored by Norfolk Cattle and BZ Acres.
Well, we get our class winners and respective seconds lined up for this division championship, and I think just an awesome set from top to bottom. I think we've got some subtle differences out here when we talk about our class winners and maybe even the seconds as well. But I think one thing's for certain, that you have to appreciate the way all these cattle get out on the move. They're right all the way in the way that they're built all the way to the ground. I think there's some things that you could adjust on every one of these. We haven't made the perfect animal yet, and we're probably never going to. But I think there's nothing wrong with these heifers. There's just some things that maybe you'd like to tweak and change just ever so slightly just to make them ideal, and that has to do with personal preference and what you like and what you think you need to see in cattle at this stage of the game. I think there's one out here that really check marks off all the things that are important to me on the list of what to look for in the selection process of cattle at this stage, and I think she's one that's just got a little extra shot of rib, still remains that sound structure and has all that power, and yet combines it with some look and some balance and some eye appeal. And that's the heifer that came out of that first class in this division. Congratulations to this young man. We bring in that second place red heifer out of that class. We talked about how different those two were in their type and kind, and how they just came at you in different packaging. I think if you wanted to keep with the theme of our champion and use one that looked more like her, you could certainly go down there and get that heifer that came out of the last class because of the way that she's built and how good she is structurally. I drew just a little bit of concern with that one about how far along she was in calf at this stage of her life, and I think in relationship to the other females out here, maybe just not quite the width and breadth of that center 1/3 that you need to see in a female at this stage of her game. That's why we're going to go ahead and use that second place heifer out of that class 1 for your reserve. Congratulations.
So your senior division champion female yearling is ring number 55. Our congratulations goes to Rail Line Farms with their winning entry of RLF 184D ET. Reserve senior female is ring number 54, the entry of Coyle Farms on Coyle Dixie Chick 24D. Our thanks to Norfolk Cattle Company and BZ Acres for their sponsorship of the awards. We're now moving into the 2-year-old division. The senior champion female will be receiving a banner courtesy of Rail Line Farms and the reserve courtesy of Hillside Farms. If there's a representative from either of those farms, if they'd like to make their way to the announcer's table, we'd love to have you for the picture.
Well, there are some maturity differences here. I think our class ranges from early March up into February, and certainly I think even though you think, 45 days isn't that big a deal, but you look at a set of 8, 9, 10-month-old heifer calves, and I think it adds to a lot of the differences we see to this particular class, whether we talk about the management or the genetics that have accentuated that management or taken advantage of that, whatever the case may be. So I think as we study this particular class and we study them from the ground up, there's one female in here that to me has a really nice foot shape. She's one that is very comfortable as she gets out and travels. I think she's got really nice reach, and I think when you look at the potential she has to continue to be a big-bodied cow that's got adequate enough muscle for me. She ties long and smooth in that muscle system, but still yet has great dimensions in terms of upper rib shape and with the base. I think this class winner really sorts herself off pretty handily. So then we begin to study what we have in terms of strengths. And here's one, you might stop her just a second. Here's one that to me is very powerful in her build. Don't often talk about or really get carried away with talking about the power in terms of muscle in females because to me it can be just a little bit of a negative in some cases. But in this case, this cow still yet stays pretty productive looking till I get to that hind leg. And then I think at that point our hock gets a little tighter, we get a little more rigid up on our pastern. Looking at her foot shape, I think it's pretty good, but you look at some coarseness back in her tail, maybe a little shallower twisted kind of a female with a little more coarseness to her udder. Then I begin to pick her apart just a little bit, but I like keeping her in the top of this deal. She's big in her forerib and heart. I think she's smooth as she ties into her shoulder. I think she manages herself pretty well for one that's that stoutly built, but she's got some things we'd like to correct. Heifer that comes next is one that's very level in her makeup and design, and if you look at one just on an outward balance standpoint and one that has a really neat presentation out here, this heifer would have to get in your eye. She's super attractive as we study her from shoulder to hip. She levels up nice. She's very well presented. I think as she disappoints me a little bit as she comes towards me and then goes away, we'd like to open her up through the floor of her chest, see a little more real shape to the center of her rib and heart girth area, and see that complemented with a little more substance all the way through. Heifer that comes next in 4, this spotted heifer, I think really reads with some interesting parts. She's as good at the ground in terms of her foot shape and size as any. She's still clean in her knee and hock. She's got good flexibility in both her knee and her hock. She's just a little rougher in her orientation right now in terms of her shoulder. She's not yet smoothed up into that rib, and she's not got quite the balance or presence we find in the heifers that are above her in 1 through 3. The little red heifer that comes next, I think, has got some neat things to offer as well. She gets a little shorter in her makeup and lacks performance as some of the other cattle. There's some good tools for this young man to work with. One that's very femininely designed. I think one that still yet, even though she's not one of the power females out here, she's one of the well-proportioned ones we see that has good depth of body. A heifer that rounds out our group that gets a little hesitant off both ends in that she wants to be a little shorter as she travels off both ends of her skeleton, up in her top just a little. We'd like to see a little more of the same sweep through the middle of her body we find in some of those cattle up the line, but an excellent class. Again, congratulations to our exhibitors, and thank you for your presentation.
Over here on in the limousine show, we're getting ready to wrap up our female side of things, and we get these 3 cows out here, and we got a trio of these older cows. And if you ever have any doubt as to what a cow's supposed to do within her life, take a look at what's standing in front of all 3 of these females. They've all 3 done outstanding jobs with the progeny that you see out here today. I think there's a heifer calf up here at the top end of this class. It's about as good as anything I've seen in the female show thus far. I believe that heifer right there could really make a run at being a champion female even today at such a young age. I think she's so good in the way that she's built. The way that she comes to us from a presentation standpoint is outstanding. She's superb in the way that she's put together, not only from nose to tail, but top to bottom. Really, really substantial in her structure. I love all the things about her. And then you work your way back into her mother. I think for an older female to have that much body mass and sheer dimension through that center and then still be able to get out and motor around the ring and be free and easy on the move is really a tribute to the good things that these breeders are doing. Just an awesome pair of females up there at the top end. Congratulations to them. I think we've got a pair here in the second spot that's a high-quality heifer calf in her own right. Maybe one that just doesn't have quite the power that you see in the one on the front pair, but there's one that is superb in her lines. I love the balance and the symmetry. You couldn't draw one any better in the way that she's built, particularly from the top side down. I think if we just add just a little more power and dimension to this young heifer calf, she can certainly rival that one that was in front of her. I think the cow is really elegant in the way that she's designed through her top line. Maybe not the overall mass that you see in the leadoff pair, but I think one that is built right has a tremendous amount of future. I mean, just look what she's already done. And then an outstanding pair to come in and round out this set of three. This is an April bull calf on this cow. She has done a masterful job in supplying that calf with a ton of power and a ton of stoutness. Doesn't matter what kind of bull that you use on that cow, she has to have half the genes that go into them making that calf, and that thing is about as stout as you can ask one to get at such a young age. Good in his body shape and design, massive down his top and out of his hip. I think the cow herself is just phenomenal in her own right because of what she's produced. We could adjust her maybe in the size and the shape to those teat structures to really ideally rival the two cows in front of her. But just a tremendous trio of pairs right there. Congratulations to all three of those exhibitors.
Exhibiting your senior champion female today is ring number 78, the entry of Coyle Farms with Coyle Avril 110A or L10A. Congratulations. They're receiving the banner courtesy of Railline Farms. Your reserve senior female today is exhibited by Grant Livestock Company with TMF Clover 6A. And your third place in that class is McConnell Livestock with Ivy's Young and Restless. Congratulations to those exhibitors, and our thanks to Railline Farms and Hillside Farms for their banner sponsorship. Over in our Shorthorn class, the results from the last class are as follows. Ring number 12 was the winner for Shady Brook Shorthorns with Shady Brook Hot Verena 56E. Second was ring 17 for Burn Boys with BBO Countin' on You 10E. Third was ring number 16, the entry of Devil's Ridge with Glenview Courtney Love 227E. Fourth is ring number 14, the entry of Maple Key Farm with Hillhaven Sierra Sabrina 35E. Fifth place goes to ring 13, the entry of OCG Cattle Company with OCG 46U Cherry Bomb 2C10E. And sixth goes to ring 15, the entry of Millbrook Farm with Millbrook Daisy's Pride AV 301E.
Outstanding lineup of all our division winners out here in the limousine show, and can't tell you enough how proud I am and when we get all these cattle back out here, how good each of them is in their own right. This has been a really fun show. I think we've seen some high quality cattle in every class, and Just real briefly, just to touch on them, you talk about some heifer calves down here on this end that are about as good as anything you're going to find anywhere within this breed. I don't care if you want to go to Louisville or Denver or Fort Worth. There's limousine cattle in this ring that can win any show in North America, no matter where you want to take them and no matter what the date or time is. I think these are about as good a set of heifer calves down here as you'll find anywhere. Unique in their type and kind. I just think just outstanding females in the making. I fully expect all three of them to come back in the future and be in contention to win in this ring as yearlings and then on in their adult life when they get into the production phase of their maturity cycles. Couple of yearling heifers here, younger September, I believe, and then a January calf here, and a yearling heifer in the back. That really good in the way that they're designed. I like the length of each one of these females. I like the feet and legs on them and how they get out and move. I think superb in their balance and in their structure. Definitely ones that are going to add a lot of dimension to a herd on down the road. And then a pair here that came out of the last class. We just talked about both of those pairs and how outstanding each of them did and respectively into what they put into their progeny. I just think an outstanding set of females right there to go out and be your senior champion. Let's give all your limousine breeders a nice big hand. Outstanding set of cattle from end to end and top to bottom. I'll go pick a champion in reserve. Congratulations to all of you.
Congratulations to your limousine show exhibitors. That looks pretty strong over there to me, and I think we've equally turned up the heat a little on a Shorthorn side as well. Really a female, I think, to begin our class of competitive February-born females that is really, really nice in terms of her structural design and flexibility on both ends. I think she lays nice into a shoulder that complements a big, soft kind of a rib. She's still yet relatively lean to the floor of her chest and her lower third to still yet have a tremendous amount of shape to her upper rib. She's not the most powerfully designed heifer in terms of muscle right through the center of her stifle, but she maintains as much true width and skeletal dimension in terms of width at the ground as any of these females. And to me, that movement and that elegant maternal look sure goes a long, long ways in this particular group of very strong heifers. I think a pretty nice heifer calf that comes next. She gets a little straighter up through her shoulder, perhaps could be opened up a bit wider through the floor of her chest, but as we put her together, she's one that's long-bodied and big in her upper rib, and there's two or three of these heifers that are more moderately sized and going to be that way as they hit maturity. That one, in my mind, is a little fresher in her conditioning, and I think likewise a little longer fronted, a little fresher in her appearance today. Here's one I'd like to work up a hole and maybe make her second today if we tone her down just a notch in terms of her conditioning. She's pretty loose through the floor of her chest, and she's already got plenty deposited on her body cavity, but just a tremendously flexible, big-footed female that really tracks easy and nice. She's not one that encumbers a great amount of management and care in terms of extra feed resources to do a tremendous amount with it. Makes her a challenge to manage, and it's good to have those showing up in our breed finally. This white heifer is one that I think really has to be studied. She's presented a little different than some of the other cattle. Her hock's not peeled down as tight. She's not as tightly clipped in her top line, and she's made just a little different up front. Really accurate and athletic when she puts her feet and legs together. She still maintains good true width in terms of skeletal width and base. She's very much like the heifer that stood third above her, but she's trimmer in her conditioning and has tremendous maternal strengths, I think, and potential in that regard. Here's one of those three that are more moderately sized, bigger bodied kind of cattle that scattered herself down into the bottom three here. primarily because of the structure of her rump and the underset that she gets to her hind leg, and the way that she pulls her hind leg up under herself is a little less attractive and a little less correct. We'd like to see that made just a little better. I do like the body she has. I do like the substance she has, more so than what we find our heifer next. A little bit flatter made, narrower chested kind of heifer that gets up in her top. Likewise, the heifer that rounds out our class, find her to be one of those that needs a bit more substance to her as well. Again, congratulations to our exhibitors, and thank you for your presentation.
We'd like to congratulate the grand champion female in our limousine show. She is ring number 78. She hails from Coyle Farms at Iona Station, and she is Coyle Avril. Congratulations. They're receiving the award courtesy of Coyle Farms from Iona Station. Your reserve grand champion female today is ring number 9. She comes to us out of the calf division. She's exhibited by Enright Farms. She is EXE Lovely 1E, and receiving a banner courtesy of Holly Limousine. At this point in time, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Mr. Mark Cressman.
Today we have the inauguration, I guess you'd call it, of the Cliff Stanton Memorial Award. The breed is fortunate to have had the experience and relationship of a Stanton family. As some of you know, Cliff Stanton passed away this past summer. He has been a friend to our Ontario limousine industry for the past 40 years. Cliff grew up with Shorthorn cattle and married Kay Stanton, who is here with us today. Are you real shy, Kay, or you can raise your hand? Thank you. She also came from a Shorthorn farm. What some of you may not know is that Kay Stanton was the first female to win the Queen's Guineas competition here in, was it 73? Anyways, so it was in fact 1954. Now, with his good eye for cattle developed over many years and many breeds, his interest in limousine cattle was always strong, and most recently was exhibited by his perfect attendance at the limousine show here at the Royal for the past 10 years. We all know that Cliff bought his first limousine cattle back 40 years ago at the 1977 Greenfield sale in Kitchener. Now, we all know that in business, the object is to buy high or to buy low and sell high. But Cliff's son Ray told me earlier this week that when talking with Cliff, his experience with limousine cattle was that he ended up being the exact opposite by buying high and selling low. Now, I personally know that it was not always such. I know back in the late 70s, we bought a 7/8 cow from Cliff Stanton for, at the time, I think it was $1,950, which was an astounding amount of money for a 7/8 cow at that time. She was good. In fact, one of her descendants went through this ring earlier today that was bred and owned by the Pinch Hill Farm. Now, Cliff loved the people in the industry. One of Cliff's greatest accomplishments of his Castleville Acres farm was selling his first limousine cattle to Art Thompson and Jim Gollinger. Now, the limousine breed in Ontario will be forever indebted to Cliff for bringing these two characters in the limousine family. In memory of Cliff, his family has made a donation to the Royal Winter Fair that will enable a trophy and financial prize to the winner of each of the Grand Champion bull and females for the next 20 years. Thank you very much, Stantons. Mrs. Stanton, do you want to come out for the trophy? Thank you.
Well, congratulations.
On our Shorthorn side, exhibiting a pair of classes for a division again, and I think our two, in this particular case, our two class winners really complement each other extremely nice. I think as they came together in their respective classes, they both were females that set themselves apart from their peers in that they were sounder, better-bodied cattle that were trim. They still had a good feminine, maternal look to them with the productivity that our Shorthorn cows are known for. And I think they've been managed and handled well at this point with regard to the maturity and the matchup to the conditioning that we see within regards to their maturity. So I really like the two heifers we have as class winners. I think we've got a pretty nice pair that stand in second behind each one of those. I think they both have issues that we probably don't find maybe quite the completeness or quite the total package, so to speak, that we find within these class winners. So it's my choice today to keep our class winners together. I actually prefer to use this younger heifer up front as your division winner, our heifer out of the older class for your reserve. And if you would, please congratulate our Shorthorn exhibitors with a nice round of applause here this afternoon.
Receiving the Sidetrack Stock Farm banner, our congratulations goes to ring number 12, the winning entry of Shady Brook Shorthorns with Shady Brook Hot Varina 58E. 56E, my apologies. Your reserve champion today in our intermediate division calf class, the award presented by Bridget Harima, is ring number 20, the entry for Robert and Carolyn Riddler and family on Maple Stone Lynette 4E.
We have a very special presentation to make now in the limousine ring. Every year, the Canadian Limousine Association gives out an award of distinction to an individual or a family that has significantly contributed to our breed over the years and has been a very prominent promoter and special person to our breed. So this year, we have the great honor of having Jim and Susan Butt here and their family. And I'm going to let Gary Smart do a little intro on Jim and Susan and their contributions to the limousine breed.
Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to come out and read this about Jim and Sue. Today we're here to recognize Jim and Sue Butt, Maple Key Farms, Embro, Ontario, for outstanding contribution and commitment and promotion of the limousine breed in Canada and of Canadian genetics around the world. Jim and Sue are people who, if they believe in something, they put their whole heart into it. And we can say that truly has been done in the limousine cattle. Jim was raised on a family farm near Embro, Ontario, and specialized in laying hens and feedlot cattle. Sue was raised in Brantford, later moving to Woodstock. Although she says she was a town girl, her family had roots in agriculture too. In 1979, Jim and Sue took over the family farm, and Jim worked as a salesman for St. Mary's Cement Company. Sue was a librarian with the Oxford County Library, dedicating this was the place to raise their family and daughters Colleen and Heather. In 1998, saw them begin their adventure in the limousine breed as they began to switch from feedlot cattle to a cow-calf operation. They speak of admiring the breed, the limousine breed of cattle belonging to their neighbors Holger and Janet Lang, and of Holger's daughter and son-in-law Chris and Keith Whiffen, taking them to their first limousine sale, the 1988 Golden Opportunity Sale, where they purchased 4 full-blood bred cows with calves at side. At the same time, they became Canadian Limousine Association and Ontario Limousine Association members. The herd soon grew to 50 cows, predominantly full-blood, and later breeding polled full-bloods. They supported the bull test program for years with bulls on test at Arkle, Hodgins, Beldoon, and Post Haven. They were supporters of the Golden Opportunity Sale, the Northern Lights Sale, as well as other sales across the country. Daughter Colleen recalls Maple Key Andrea being named their first elite dam. Maple Key breeding stock has sold throughout Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New York, Florida, and Georgia. Both Jim and Sue have served terms as directors on the Ontario Limousine Association with keen interest in promotions and advertising committees. Jim was an OLA president in 1995 and then took a term as the Canadian board member from 1997 to 2003, including a term as president. Jim and Sue are a perfect example of teamwork. One will take the job and the other is there to support and back up. They are huge supporters of the Limousin Junior program and its opportunities it provides our youth. At many CJLA conferences, you'll find Jim and Sue working as judges of events and behind the scenes sorting and tabulating. In 2000, Jim and Sue decided to attend the International Limousin Congress in France and came back excited about this experience of the breeders they had met around the world and the cattle they had saw. Since then, they have traveled to ILCs in the United Kingdom, Australia, Denmark, Sweden, Argentina, and Ireland, and encouraged other Canadian breeders to attend as well. In 2011, brought the beginning of change at Maple Key Farms with the plans for daughter Colleen and son-in-law Warren to come home and take part in the farming operation with their children Avery and Erin. Now the 5th generation on the farm, this has allowed Jim and Sue to think of semi-retirement and more time to spend with their 3 grandchildren and to travel and see the world, but always with Limousin promotional booklets in their luggage. In 2014, after 25 years of breeding Limousin cattle, the decision was made to focus on other aspects of the farm, and the herd was sold to Hawkeye Cattle Company, Matliniak and family. When asked about the highlights of those 25 years, they recall receiving the Margaret Madgett Award Breeder of the Year in 2002, helping to organize the International Limousin Congress, and the many great friendships they have made. While the Limousin breed has benefited from the Butts' involvement, we would like to be remiss to mention that Jim is a charter member of the Hickson Lions Club and have been recently awarded with the John Tipping Award for 40 years of community service. Sue's work as the member of the Brookside St. Andrews UCW and 4-H leader and Girl Guide leader. Jim is also has been a counselor for the Zone 3 Egg Farmers of Ontario for many years, just more proof of the community service. Jim and Sue and their family, Colleen, Warren, Heather, Kyle, Avery, and Erin, and Alex, thank you for your dedication of unfailing support to Limousin.
Jim and Sue, if we could have you come out along with Tessa Verbeek, our General Manager of the Canadian Limousin Association, to receive the CLA Award of Distinction. And at this time, I'd also like to introduce their family, daughter Colleen Shrigley, daughter Heather Kaladi, and their grandchildren, Aaron and Alex, that are here with them today. Congratulations.
Oh, on behalf of the Canadian Limousin Association and the Board of Directors, I'm very proud to award Jim and Susan Butt with our Canadian Limousin Association 2017 Award of Distinction.
On our Shorthorn side, working into a set of January heifer calves, and I think there's quite a bit of variation in here in terms of types and kinds and lateness of maturity or earliness of maturity. But I think there's 3 really nice representatives here of a good balance of a lot of worlds. I think this heifer that starts our class, she picks her feet up nice. She places them with good athleticism and accuracy. She has good width of chest floor. She's one that I really like from her front third in regards to the tie that she has at the top of her neck and the feminine look that she gives me, the maternal look that she gives me. And like the other 3 that I have lined up here, they're females that all have some refinement to their udder. I realize that it's hard to tell a lot about baby calves, but certainly those big coarse teats at this age can't get better. And so I think we see some good potential with regards to the maternal strengths and the udder quality we might find. Really like the way this girl gets out and travels. She places those feet right where she needs to. I think our white heifer and red heifer become a little closer pair. They're both a little tighter made in their orientation in terms of being slightly straighter in their shoulder, or maybe a little more tightness in the way that they hit the ground on their hock or pastern. But I think you still have to be appreciative of the fresh presentation they have. They still have some depth to their forerib. They still have some shape to their top. Our red heifer gets just a little less width the base as she gets around and travels away from us than our white heifer does. That's 2, but I really like that top pair of, or that top trio of heifers in regards to their soundness, their balance, and their conformation. Heifer that comes next is one that I like a lot of things about. I read a lot of strength in this heifer's muzzle and jaw, and the width that she has to her top line and the depth that she has to her forerib. As I get into the design of her skeleton and the way that she manages her shoulder and her hind legs, she becomes a little more restricted, a little tighter as she goes off both ends because of the straightness that we see in that skeletal orientation. A big old loose-made heifer that comes next, and certainly one that to me just needs to have the look of a little less management potential. I think we need to strengthen her jaw. I think we need to fill her in behind her shoulder. I think we need to tie some of that forerib together with a little more boldness, and then see her maintain a little more width of base. You still like the big, powerful cow that she is in terms of her growth and potential. Certainly she offers those things to you. The white heifer that comes next is just a little shorter coupled and a little shorter design. She's a little like the roan heifer that ended up being 4 in terms of her kind. She's actually stronger at the ground in terms of footwork and perhaps even a notch sounder. She gets quite a bit shorter bodied. Her short tail certainly is one that concerns me a little bit in my part of the country, but certainly one that I think has got some potential to be a nice brood cow. Just a little plainer kind of heifer we round out our group with. She actually travels with a good length of stride. She just doesn't have quite the balance and presence that we see in those heifers that are in 1, 2, and 3 for certain. Again, congratulations to our exhibitors, and thank them for their presentation.
Congratulations to ring number 31, the winner of that class for Flight Path Shorthorns, David and Joanne Curry and family, with Flight Path Nicole Emma 120E. In second is ring number 30, the entry of Millbrook Farm, with Millbrook Miss Lizzie TG6E. In third is ring number 29, the entry of Maple M Shorthorns, with RK Esmeralda 114E. Fourth is ring number 28, the entry of JWM Shorthorns, with JWM Leading Lady 7E. Fifth is ring 25, the entry of Elba Glen Cattle Company, with Glenview Elegance 129E. Sixth is ring 27, also the entry from Flight Path, David and Joanne Curry and family, with Flight Path Blossom Elsa 124E. And in seventh place, ring 26, the entry of Sideline Cattle Company, with Hillhaven SBF Dottie Jill 13E. In the limousine show, we are now entering the bull calf classes, so we're now into the bull show. First class is your bull calves. There are 3 classes of bull calves in a limousine show today, and we'd like to thank the sponsor that will be making the presentation to the champion bull calf, Railline Farms. The reserve will be receiving an award courtesy of Revolution Cattle Company.
Well, nice way to start off our limousine bull show. Really a good set of these bull calves out here. A couple of red calves up here at the top end. I think really excel the class from a power and performance standpoint. I love the rib shape, the extra depth of side that you see in our class winner, and yet you get him on the move, and he's one of the sounder moving bulls out here because of the flex that he has back there, particularly off of those rear two. And that's due to the fact he's got a little extra circumference to that foot and depth to that heel, can really get out and motor around, and with all the volume and capacity that you see, and still packages it up with a extreme amount of balance. I think the one that comes into the second spot is one maybe gets a little tucked up in through that flank. He's cut up a little higher from that navel back to his testicular attachment, but there's one that's got a ton of shape, meat and mass just for days in that guy, and you have to appreciate that about him. And I think that's one of the reasons why you need to find him up there in the top pair, because of the substantial amount of muscling that you see. A unique bull here in the third spot, the black bull calf, is one that's a little harder to read. He's not wanting to show himself off, but I love the length of spine, the levelness down that top line. Just need to open him up underneath, particularly through those rear underpinnings, and just see some more volume from side to side. A big stout-featured bull that goes out next is one that we could correct him out of that hawk and the way that he travels, set him down a little more fluid motion when we watch him on the travel. I think that one's got a lot of usefulness built into him as well. A red bull that goes out next maybe gets just a little more compact off of both ends, a little shorter coupled, if you will, in a relationship to the bulls, maybe on either side of him, but one that still has some usefulness to him. Maybe need to stouten him up in his testicular development as well for this stage of the game. I think a couple of black bull calves that go out next that have some good things about their structural build. I like the length of body. I like the substantialness down their top, and from a muscling standpoint, maybe just not quite the balance and the look and the way that they're pieced together today to get up any higher. Good class of bull calves start off our limousine bull show.
Your winning entry is ring number 987, the entry of Coyle Farms with Coyle Earmark 16E. He was your class winner. Second is ring number 86, the entry of After Hours Limousines with After Hours Enjoy the Ride. Third goes to ring number 85, the entry of Holly Limousine with Holly's Emperor. Fourth is ring number 88, the entry of Darling Farms with Darling Enforcer 20E. Fifth is ring number 82, the entry of Three Ridge Farms with Three Ridge Estrada. Sixth is ring number 84, the entry of Loyal Line Limousine with Loyal Line Earl. And seventh goes to ring number 81, the entry of Broniac Farms, Ethan Broniac Show Cattle with BFL Evolution. Now moving into class 2 of 3 of our bull calf competition. Once again, if there's a representative from Rail Line Farms and Revolution Cattle Company, if you'd like to make your way to the announcer's table, we'd love to have you in the awards presentation.
Over on our Shorthorn side, we've worked our way into an earlier set of January-born cattle, heifers that I think have done a nice job presenting themselves out here most of the time, but one that works her way up to me that becomes a very, very strong contender. A big-bodied, dimensional heifer that's got tremendous shape to her top. She still has good angles up through her front end in terms of a maternal look. I think she gives us that, and she gives it with a tremendous reach and strength off both ends of her skeleton. Truthfully, from there, I thought there was some trade-offs, but I thought as you study the cattle that are remaining, you look at the values that they have in terms of length of body and freshness of presentation and reasonable size as we project them to maturity. I think you become familiar and favorite with this heifer that's second. This heifer, to me, as she gets out and travels, easily follows our class winner in her reach. She's not as powerful built in terms of the dimensions we find through the top of her upper rib, nor does she maintain quite the same strength of width of base. But as she gets out and travels, she's one that's comfortable in her skeleton. She seems to me to be one that's still yet going to have some shape to her. She reads to me to be one that has got a maternal look to her because of her length of body, because she's got some outward shape to her rib. Heifer in third, to be honest, I get hard on her from time to time, and I think a lot of it is the darkness of her color out here. She wants to get a little flatter appearing at times, and as you catch her on a 45-degree angle and really see the outward turn to her rib that she has. You see the expression she has through her upper hip. She becomes more appealing to me. She's not as wide-based as I'd like to have her in regards to the rest of her skeletal width. She wants to narrow up just a little bit, and I became a little more critical of her because of that. This heifer, to me, that I roll down a hole and put underneath that heifer, as she gets out and travels, wants to pull that neck down on her shoulder a little more uncomfortably. She reaches with a little more calculation. She's not quite the length of hip in this heifer that we have and the heifer that's third, but I think she's the better athlete between her and the heifer that comes next. I think she's one that's more femininely made in terms of her muscle design and shape. I think also she's one that's got more natural shape to her rib. This heifer gets a little calculated as she gets out and travels. She's the shortest strided of the group we have out here, certainly the most expressive as well. Big top, big hip, kind of a female, but still yet looks a little more to the terminal side of things than the maternal. Heifer that rounds out our group, again, gets just a little less attractive than some of the other cattle with regards to balance and design, but a really strong class of early Januaries. Again, congratulations to our exhibitors, and thank you for your exhibition.
I'd like to congratulate the winning entry, ring number 37, Hillhaven Shorthorns, with their winning entry of Hillhaven Breathless LE6E. Second goes to ring number 35, the entry of Watson Cattle Company, with WAT Flight Path Cumberland 115E. Third is ring number 36, the entry of Melmat Livestock, with MML I Love Lucy 3E. Fourth is ring 32, the entry of Watson Cattle Company, with WAT Bobby's Primo Girl 120E. Fifth is ring 34, the entry of Sidetrack Stock Farm, with Sidetrack Diamonds Dottie 03E. And sixth is ring number 33, the entry of Southfield Farm, with JRS Just Peachy 1E.
Well, over here on the limousine side, I think a fairly challenging class of these bull calves. Quite a few things to sort through, and I think the easiest thing to do in my mind is to find this one up here at the top end because of the soundness in which he gets out and travels. I think he's one that's got more flex, more reach, more push and pull off all four corners when we watch him on the go than the other bulls that stand behind him. Along with that, he's more opened up through that center 1/3. He shows us more natural spring of rib, more depth of body and depth of side as well, and then puts it together in a relatively smooth and neat made package. And yes, he probably has a little more throat than ideal for me, but that's part of the breed's nature, and I accept that on him. I think here's one that's still smooth made and well balanced from end to end. I like the presentation on the calf here in the second spot. I think he's got a notch more length down that top line, maybe particularly out of the back side of his hip than the bull that stands right in front of him, but maybe not quite the elevation through that front 1/3. And along with that, when you set him into motion, he doesn't have quite the flexibility off of those rear two. We'd like to see him reach and cover with more substantial confidence, like what we have in that bull that wins the class, but a nice pair to go out first and second. I think a smaller, more moderate framed and younger calf here that's going to come out into the third spot is really complimentary of the two ahead of him in the way that he's built and the way that he's designed. Yes, there's not as much to him, but I think there's one that's got some pieces built into him for the future that you could certainly build upon on down the road. Just need to see more bull today to really rival the two in front. A bigger long-sided calf that comes out next, the one that just simply doesn't have enough meat and muscle to him when you get right around behind him. He gets a little deviated right there in that first and second rib. He doesn't have quite the expansion right there through that heart and through that fore rib to really lend him enough smoothness to get up any higher as well. But I think here's one that's got some length and some body to him that you can certainly build upon. A couple of red bulls that round out this set that are really neat made. I think bulls that have some functional aspects to their makeup. I think some just good cattleman type bulls that you'd like to see maybe handle their feet and legs a little nicer when we get them and set them on the move, but a good class of those limousine bull calves from top to bottom.
Congratulations to ring number 92, the winning entry from Gibson Farms, with EGL Gibson's Eddie the Eagle. Second is ring number 94, the entry of Holly Limousine, with Holly's Easy Rider. Third is ring number 89, the entry from Gibson Farms with EGL Gibson's Earl. Fourth is ring number 93, the entry of BZ Acres with BZ Polled Enterprise 11E. Fifth is ring number 91, the entry for Crown Hill Acres with Crown Hill Easy Does It 6E. And six is ring number 90, the entry of Haystack Acres with Haystack's Earthquake. Class in the ring is the final class before the selection of champion bull calf. Again, we'd like to thank Railline Farms and Revolution Cattle Company for their banner sponsorship. Semex is the fastest growing genetic company in the world, leading in all areas of dairy, beef, and embryos. Together with its owners, WestGen, EastGen, and CIAQ, Semex is a proud supporter of the Royal and looks forward to welcoming guests from all over the world to see the best compete on Canada's most prestigious national stage, the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair.
You know, we face similar situations in the United States with regards to our shorthorn cattle, and you guys can be familiar with this if you go to Louisville or Denver and you look at the top to bottom group of our cattle, and we frankly need to get better in terms of our consistency with regards to our practical production traits. This class, for me, does an extremely good job of bringing a lot of cattle at a lot of a competitive level all the way through this particular lineup. These early January heifers, there are very subtle differences between them. We could line them up differently in 4 months or 6 months or maybe as we watch them through their productive life. But I think there's some good cattle with value all the way to the end of this class that are hard to be critical of. But as we line them up, we've got to establish some priorities. And in doing so, I think we need to recognize these two in the top end here as they start at the ground with a really nice shape to their foot. They become very comfortable in their skeleton and in the way that they handle themselves as they get out and travel. Of that pair, I like our class winner in regards to her front third, the extension she shows us in that area. I think a good practical sized maturity. We project these two too as we see them become mature cows, good jawed, good muzzle, easy managing kind of cattle that put us back to where we belong in regards to getting that commercial interest that we desire and need. These heifers both have good shape to their upper rib, good muscularity. There are more powerful heifers. There are more femininely designed heifers in the lineup. What a nice pair to tie to in terms of balance, athleticism, and quality. Our black-nosed, black-vulvaed heifer that comes next is, I think, one that follows this particular lineup with in first and second because of the rib shape we see through her front third. We see a tremendous extension to her front end. Look how comfortable she reaches out of that shoulder. She steps out, keeps her head up where it needs to be on that shoulder. But as she gets out to the end of that skeleton and we look at the shape of her hip, that doesn't bother me a lot. In my country, those cattle have some slope to their hip, and it precludes them to be better athletes at times. This heifer, to me, gets a little shorter in her hip. She wants to be a little more hesitant on her hind leg. She gets a little shorter and choppier on that hind leg because of that. Here's a big-backed stout one, and of this group, her and the heifer that follows her would have to be the cattle that have the muscle advantages out here in this strong set of heifer calves. So as we study her, the things that hurt her a little bit are going to go along with one that's that stout. She gets a little forward placed in her shoulder. She toes out a little in front, a little tighter out of her hip and on her hind leg. But what a long-bodied, big-bodied kind of a heifer she is, and how honest and stout she is in that presentation. Likewise, the roan heifer that follows her, big and stout in terms of her rib and the shape she has, a little more calculated in her movement as it goes along with that body type. One that toes out a little in front, gets a little hesitant as she travels off both ends. Here's one that is a little different out here in this group. She's an ultra moderate kind of a female. It's really easy doing and easy keeping. She's a little more forward placed in her shoulder. She's a little longer in her toe, a little flatter in her heel. But what a nice, easy managing kind of a cow she is. Super deep in her rib. She's very mobile as she gets out and travels and handles that pretty well. Probably need a little more growth presentation or orientation to compete with these strong heifers in this particular class. A heifer that rounds out our group just gets a little more restricted in her body type and kind, but an excellent set. Again, congratulations to your exhibitors, and thank you for that presentation.
Well, over here on the limousine side of the ring, this last class in our bull calf division, I think a red bull that comes up here to the top quite easily in my mind. I think just one that put together extremely well from top to bottom and nose to tail. And he's a calf that you can see the correctness to his angulation out of that hock and knee. He's not wanting to tell you and really show you about it when you get him on the move. He's just wanting to fight that halter and kind of be a little stubborn. But there's one that is just built right from end to end and top to bottom. Tremendous amount of balance and eye appeal. You get around behind him, he certainly doesn't disappoint you with the amount of sheer width and mass that he has back there through his hip, how he carries it down in through his stifle. The only thing I would question on this guy is a little bit of a testicular size issue for me in relationship to the rest of the bulls out here, but I think they're plenty big enough to go ahead and get him up here to the top end of the class. A big stout-made black bull calf there comes into the next spot. He's got about an extra rib's worth of length in through that center and still handles himself really well over that top line when we set him into motion. Extremely powerful when we get around behind him. As wide as you can ask one to be from stifle to stifle. Still gets out with enough flexibility, maybe not quite the length of stride that you see in our class winner, but certainly has some cushion and some flexibility enough to get around and get him up there into that second spot. A neat made calf and comes into the third spot. I like this one on the profile. I appreciate the squareness to his top side of his skeleton. I think there's one that we open him up, particularly through that front 1/3, correct him out of that knee and give him some more of the correctness to that angulation from the bottom of that scapula down in through that forearm and knee. I think we could really work him up into that next spot in the lineup. A couple of Red Bull calves that come next, maybe a little more modern in their frame size, but certainly functional in their build. I like the softness to the design, and particularly in through that center 1/3 of the bull that goes out next. Maybe just need to correct him in the hip structure, elevate him through that pin set, see him a little longer and a little flatter from hook to pin to really balance out when we get him on the profile. And a calf that comes next, just not quite as secure and firm in that foundation as we set him into motion. Just needs a little added bone work, maybe some extra circumference to that foot size to really elevate him to the top spot within the class. And then a bigger, higher performing bull in the Red Bull calf the young man has that comes next. One that gets out with a relative amount of ease on the go, maybe just doesn't quite balance out for me in the way that he's designed from end to end. And then the next two bulls in the lineup just get a little plainer in their makeup for me, maybe get a little heavier fronted, maybe a little lighter when we study them off of the rear view. I think bulls maybe just could use a little stoutening up from over in terms of their overall mass from nose to tail. But a nice class of bulls, high quality class of bulls at the top end.
On our Shorthorn side, I would hope that you would have some excitement for the cattle that you see out here. I certainly do, and We've seen some really, really nice class winners up to this point. This division of cattle had a class or two in it that had a little more variation, and you may strongly disagree with the way that I lined them up. But I think when we get when you think about putting our cattle as a breed into a practical, easy management, management-friendly kind of a situation and environment, I think these 6 heifers do a pretty nice job finding a niche and a fit in that regard. I'm going to go back and talk our class winners or our seconds. Certainly at this point, I don't think it's necessary in the essence of time, but I am very complimentary of you folks that are exhibiting the Shorthorn cattle here this year, particularly with this division. It's probably the most consistent division I've seen and may get to see. Let's put our hands together. We'll congratulate their effort, and I'll show you the 2 I like the best out of it.
Your senior heifer calf champion in the Shorthorn show today is ring number 45, the entry of Maurice Verstrat with Millbrook Maria GL4E. They're receiving a banner courtesy of Hillhaven Farm of Duntroon, Ontario. Your reserve champion today is ring number 42, the entry of Shady Brook Shorthorns with Shady Brook Perfect Spice 2E, and they're receiving a banner courtesy of Ridgeview Cattle Company. Our congratulations to all exhibitors. Your senior calf champion, ring number 45, the entry of Maurice Verstrat with Millbrook Maria GL4E, and your reserve ring 42, the entry of Shady Brook Shorthorns with Shady Brook Perfect Spice 2E. Over in the limousine ring, the placings from the last class are as follows. Ring number 95 was the winner for Railline Farms with RLF Empire 251E. In second was ring number 101, the entry of Bellamore Farm Limited on Bellamore Endeavor 701E. Third was ring number 96, After Hours Limousine on After Hours Extreme. Fourth, ring number 100 on with Darling Farms with Darling Eliminator 31E. Fifth is ring number 102, the entry of BZ Acres with BZ Pulled Essential 1E. And 6 is ring number 98, the entry of Archon Cattle Company with Archon's Ethanol ET. 7th is ring number 97, the entry of Bellamore Farm Limited on Bellamore Eddy 709E. And 8th is ring 99, the entry of Broniac Farms, Ethan Broniac Show Cattle on BFL Easton 1E. The judge is now making his selection. For the champion bull calf, we'd like to recognize the sponsors, Railline Farms and Revolution Cattle Company.
Well, we get our class winners and seconds out here on the limousine side for the calf division in our bull show, and I think we've got some high-quality contenders out here, and one of the things you probably heard me say all day, and if you were here with us yesterday, I talked a lot about it, and that was that structural soundness and how cattle get out and move and how we can make them and manipulate them in their build just through genotypic selection. And I think there's some things that you can certainly see out here within this set of bulls, that there's some variance in their type and kind, and especially in the way that they're built from the ground up. We've got to start with some circumference of foot. We've got to start with a relative good amount of bone, and they've got to be stable in their joint work to be able to get out and not only move right here in the ring, but get out when we put them into a breeding program and let them go out and travel the pastures and work like they should. And I think there's one for me that really blends a lot of good things together. The volume, capacity, muscling, and then most importantly, how he gets out and he travels. I think he's about as a good a one that you can find in terms of the way that he's built structurally. The flatness to his shoulder, and yet he's still got the right angle down in through that knee and still shows you some power through that forearm. He's really, really good off of his rear too. He just gets out and travels with just so much ease and fluidity about his movement. It's pretty hard to fault him in one direction. And that was that bull calf that came out of your first class in this division. He's going to be your champion. Congratulations to him. I think for me, once you find that bull and you have to use him to win this division, there's a lot of different avenues you can take with the next pick in the lineup. There's some things that you have to appreciate about the second place to our champion that came out of that class. There's some things you have to appreciate about the black bull that came out of the class 2 and how good he is all the way down to the ground. And then you have to appreciate the build and the uniqueness to which our Class 3 winner is designed. I think if you're going to stick with that reasoning that I just laid out for you from a breeding perspective and a structural selection process, you really have to gravitate towards one over the other, and that's the bull that came out of Class 2 because of how good he is all the way to the ground. When we watch him go, he's going to be your reserve champion in this lineup.
Your bull calf champion today receiving the Rail Line Farms Award is ring number 87. Exhibited by Coyle Farms, he is Coyle Earmark 16E. Your reserve bull calf champion is ring number 92, the entry of Gibson Farms with EGL Gibson's Eddie the Eagle. And they're receiving an award courtesy of Revolution Cattle Company. Green Tractors, a John Deere dealership, has been very generous in donating some promotional items, and each breed has all the exhibitors' names entered into the draw. And in our limousine competition, Shannon Gibson was the winner of the Green Tractors pail of promo items. So it is up here at the announcer's table. So Shannon Gibson, you're the lucky winner of some John Deere items, and you can pick it up here. And in the Shorthorn competition, Austin Byrne. Austin Byrne, you were the winner of the John Deere promotional pail, and it's here for you to pick up. So congratulations. Austin Byrne was the winner of the Green Tractors promo items in the Shorthorn show, and Shannon Gibson in the limousine show.
On our Shorthorn side, we've got a set of March through February females, March through May's, excuse me, I'll get it right here in just a minute, of the yearling females. Certainly some variation here again in terms of conformation and even to the point of how they've been managed to end or begin their productive life. There's a couple of heifers out here that are sure enough getting far along in terms of their gestation. I think as we study the cattle and look at them from the ground up and look at how they complement their skeletal design and orientation, there's a couple out here that work their way up to me. I think it's complemented by a bit more balance. I think in terms of proportionality, these heifers are pretty good. There's heifers out here that have more shape in terms of width, right from hooks to pins and down into their stifle. These heifers, though, look to me like cows that still have some substance to them. They've got some jaw strength to them. They've got some foot size and shape advantages over some of the other heifers we have out here to still be complemented by clean joints. That heifer that wins this class, I'd like to see just a nickel further along in her gestation, but just a big wide back kind of a heifer that's tremendously wide in terms of her orientation and skeletal width, and still yet has a maternal look as I look at her through her front, third, and side. This red heifer doesn't have quite as much to her, but I think very nicely presented out here. One that has good comfort in her top line as she gets out and travels. She rests comfortably on her feet and legs as she gets off both ends, and I think she's got more than enough muscle. The two heifers that we talked about being pretty far along in terms of their progression of gestation are the two that are third and fourth. And of that pair, I think these two females to me are good soft substance kind of heifers. They've got some rib shape to them. I think they don't have quite the strength that the heifers that are first and second have with regards to foot size, or maybe the strength in terms of width of base. But what a nice cow we're going to find one day, and that third place heifer already see a tremendous degree of refinement to her udder. She's not quite as flexible on both ends, but again, she's packing quite a bit of baby. That has something to do with her overall mobility, but certainly not quite the presentation or look we get from the side of the ones that are in first and second. Again, a heifer here in fourth that gets a little plainer through her front third for some folks. She's got plenty of chest in her for some. It's not a deal breaker for me anymore. I think those cows sure make a lot more, they're a lot easier to manage. They're a lot easier doing kind of cattle. And like our heifer that's ahead of her in third, we can get a read on that udder, and looks to me like she's got a pretty good degree of refinement to those teats. Heifer that comes next is another big-bodied, pretty proportional kind of heifer that's relatively comfortable as she gets out of her front end, gets a little more restricted on her hind leg perhaps, a little more open at the top of her shoulder, and reads a little more coarsely in her makeup compared to some of the other heifers. This is a heifer coming next. Great deal of refinement to her and balance. Probably need more substance to be competitive against those heifers above them. And then a set of heifers here that we round out our class with. They get a little more forwardly placed in their shoulder, a little more restricted on both ends of their skeleton in regards to their movement. We'd like to see them more comfortable as they get out and travel with a bit more substance to go along with that. Again, a nice set of Shorthorn cattle. Congratulations to our exhibitors, and again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Well, over here on our limousine side, just a single entry bull calf that is one that can certainly stand some competition. I like this guy from the view that he gives you right here.